Hoo, 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 hoo. How's everyone doing? Is the microphone picking up the fan maybe? Yeah, it's a bit calmer. Let's switch to that. No, let's switch to this one. As it's the not 30-minute warm-up one. Camera. Alright. Whoop, whoop. 2-week challenge. First man up is Dearbard. Hey Amir. He did a really cool idea. Two kids. The topic was for the 2-week challenge was interior design. Two of the most known criminals are hiding in their hideout. The challenge this time around is to design and draw the interior of the hideout. Is it a wooden shed in the countryside, a lair inside a mountain, an expensive villa? You decide. Ixie with that Twitch Prime subscription. 7th month in a row. I am impressed, Ixie. I am impressed. Thank you very much. Oh, I need to change the topic there. It should be number 24. Right. So, Dearbards. I think it's a really good one. It has a great mood to it. The things I would change is probably, hey Captain Boss, is a little bit in terms of what they're doing and like how to tell the story. You know, like one way could be like the expression. Like they're checking if the coast is clear, you know, like being a lot more expressive in their point of view, and in the way like the drapery is and how I'm assuming, let's say it's a boy, Mr. Panka. It's an extra stream because it's the end of a 2-week challenge. Thanks, Ice Die. Those illustrations are old now. But thank you very much. So I would work on drapery a little bit, like how they're opening. You know, is it just a little bit or poking out? I would probably alter the thing hanging down a little bit so the narrative is stronger. You know, we can clearly see the expression better, poking out, and I assume the kid is eating whatever treats they've stolen. So in that case, you know, like you could have maybe the bag of treats on the floor with a little bit of candy. You know, maybe you could have one on his lap, and maybe he's like chewing on a piece. Maybe there's some candy on the floor, you know, so like obviously, so that the point is really pushed across. And I think there's something weird with the chairs in terms of like thickness of the legs or the scale of the kids. It's something that's awkward between this character and this chair. I think the drop off, like you're skewing the perspective quite a lot in the size difference between the chair and the kids and that chair. but the kids don't change that much in size, so it becomes this weird um, two things clashing with each other. Let me guide. I'll turn the fan on. Let me know if you hear um, the like white noise, or if the microphone picks up the fan. It looks like it. It's blowing in the microphone, isn't it? Let me know. Yeah. So I would. I'll switch it off. So I would like squeeze them in a bit, making it a lot more personal, like the tightness in between the space, so that it becomes a lot more intimate and personal. So that we don't need to travel so far in the image, that it's a lot more tighter and we can see a lot more detail and expression and so on, because it's about it's about their secret hideout and them, right? It's a part of the thing, and a lot of the way the hideout is set up is quite nice. That they're hanging things off the chair, but I'd probably try to hide some of the information, so it becomes the focal points become clearer. Because when you have everything equal, like on the cloth, we lose a little bit of that not randomness, but guiding and real world complexity. So I find it like there's always this risk of being too clean and too even everywhere, and when that happens, the paintings or illustration becomes stiff. So by allowing putting in a little bit variety, you can help guide the eye through it. So I would work on the expression, the framing, tighten the image a lot more in terms of spatial thing. And this wood boards, I understand that it's with the line tool. I would soften the arranging, or like the arrangement of the square a lot more, so it's not so precise, so that you create a little bit more softness in the way we observe the scene. Because when it becomes so rigid, because already perspective is rigid, you need means to make the picture fun to look at and not stiff and calculated. Hey Zelin, how's it going? So that would be the feedback to hear. In terms of color, I kind of like the simplified palette. It reads well, it's clean, kind of fresh, would work great in a kid's book. So I don't mind the colors. I would just work on those things I talked about. Make sure that the emotions come across on the faces, like they're worried, like is someone around? Are we gonna get caught? And maybe, you could even like in here, maybe his and hers, if it's his and hers, thieves' masks. Maybe he has it like on his head while he sits in place to help sell the idea more. You know, but they are the thieves. Hey, Lurib. Yeah, it's an extra stream. So that would be the feedback for you, dear Bard. Make sure the narrative is stronger. Who's next? Who's next? Who's next? Who's next? I'm gonna try to be quick about it. I think Gila posted again later on. Griffin Art, I think is up. This is Griffin Arts. So it's not so much the interior, but more of like the one of his stations. We can't really see the interior space. The idea was to design the lair. So in terms of brief, you missed it a little bit. So it became a little bit too tight. Like I would have loved to see the space he sits in, and not only the device he sits in front of. That being said, you need to study these lighting conditions more. The light is it's not too far off being accurate, but there's too many things that makes it inaccurate. Now, one of the things is your brush marks. Much like Lou Rib is working on, you can go to his sketchbook on the Discord. You start and stop within the shape of what you're painting. Like we can see it on the marks on the sofa here. That you start and stop within the edge. And what that does is you create objects of the marks rather than the marks being a part of the surface you're describing. So when you're starting and stopping within, you're lumping everything into strange blobs of information. So for example, on his jacket shoulder here, if you would make a new layer and make sure that when you make the brush marks you flow all the way through the form and like imagine traveling with a brush on top of this jacket or the surface of the jacket and try to describe how the jacket bends in 3D space, right? And don't worry so much about the edge because it's going to be on a separate layer. And then when you work that up and spend some time really thinking about the folds and what material that it is that you're painting, and so on, then you can easily just go back in and sharpen the edge, erase, or paint more and define more. But because you made that safety net of using it on a separate layer, you have a lot more control, and you don't need to be scared of painting on top of the cat because you can erase it away. Or another way is to use selections. So you predetermine the selection shape with like a lasso tool, and you hide the selection, and then you can paint all you want. Or you can use a mask, like over. Oh, you can see, like on this. That's mask. So now the selection is there, and now you don't need to have a selection. You can paint away all you want. The document won't receive the paint there because it's in a mask. And then make sure that you spend time working on edges where they can be sharp and defined or soft and they merge together. Control H is hide. Yeah, like what I mean is you make a new layer, and then whatever you paint on the layer, you don't need to worry about what's behind it because it's in a separate layer. So what I meant by that is when you're working on edges and making sure edges are or the form is described correctly, you need to have those safety measures put down so that you can erase back into it. So you don't paint, define, paint, define, and like juggle the edge, because then it's going to be nasty looking as well. So another good trick to remember is on average, lit forms have sharper edges, and shadows edges and shadows are softer, and they get lost more. So looking at your painting, there's no real edge control over where we should be looking. So as an example, let's soften a lot of edges on these goggles, but still try to define them, right? So I'm gonna just do a little bit more of definition, but keeping it somewhat soft. And there is a great edge rules on internet in terms of rules. Let me try to find it. I've talked about this before. The more time that passes, the more it's lost in time. Old masters were really good at it. Portrait painters and so on. Let's see. No, I can't find it at the moment. So what I try to Google is edge rule. Like there's 5 edge rule. And of course I can't find it as I'm trying to find it, but it's about, in theory, it's more or less this image, and the amount of edges and sharpness of the edges he has in there, which is the general rule is like a sharp edge, soft edge, lost edge meaning like the neck versus the jacket, that edge there between those two objects are really soft. It's lost. There's no definition there. While the edge in front of him, which is being directly lit, is a sharp edge. And there is a difference in variety, and like they should be used as a compositional tool. So the more you understand it, the better you can implement it and have success with how we read different volumes. So anyway, so back to the goggles. By then, like selecting the edge of the goggles, as I soften the edges around it, I'm just gonna try to paint that edge really sharp now with help of selection. and you can also increase contrast. But the idea is that with variety in sharpness, you can dictate where we're looking. And if you're making the mistake of making very blotchy lines that, like I explained about the edge of the jacket or the chair, combined with no variation in your edge work, where everything is equally blurry, and you're only using contrast, the image becomes very noisy to look at, and it's really important to be aware of what you're doing and how you have to handle it. Practice makes perfect, and if you're not aware of something like that, then of course, yeah, you wouldn't know the mistakes you're doing. But that's why it's important that we read up on what we are trying to do and learn, so that with knowledge we can study it and implement it. Let's see. Yeah, I mean it's definitely in the lines of that, for sure. It's a good. I've used this as an example before, and it's good. It's a good suggestion of things to think about, like soft and hard edges, where to blur them and where to sharpen them. Like on the left, this is just too little variation. It's all the same treatment. And here on the right one, they deliberately gone in and altered shapes to make the image itself read better. It's not only edge work, by the way, it's light as well. But through that, you have to choose which places to push and which places to fall behind. So when looking at this one, for example, like one important interaction should probably be his hand and not his cat. His cat at the moment takes up all the contrast and edges. Like it becomes the main focus. Where you would probably want the cat to read secondary and not as the main goal of the story. The story is most likely his interaction with the device, right? So you would need to work on that a little bit more and define it and gesture and all these things. Color, contrast, edges. But again, the 2-week challenge was more towards interior design. I mean, you designed a piece of the interior, which is, it's nice. But there's quite a lot of mistakes in here in terms of light, but it's a great start, and it shows that you are trying to push yourself, which is nice. I think I've given you some good homework to think about in terms of edges and form. How do you have to paint through the form rather than stop and start within it? Because you create it's very unpleasant to look at an image where that occurs. It just becomes like the blobs of paint just vibrates rather than we read them for what they're trying to be described as. Hopefully it'll make sense. Just small adjustments, but of course all the changes needs to be followed through. There is light issues and temperature issues and so on, but I don't think that's the major problems with your painting. I'd say work on those things first and kind of study it, and then you can move forward with the next layer of mistakes. But good job. Nice try. I think provoking perch posted. That's the one, the final. Hello. No. All right. So I think he talked about like electrical thieves or what was it? Um, Sci-fi cyberpunk genre fuel thieves. There we go. They disguise themselves as industrial workers and steal from the reserves of the authorities, and then come to seek refuge in this sort of decommissioned reactor room deep in the bowels of the industrial complex. They also keep some of the wanted posters they find lying around as mementos. So lots of design stuff, which is cool. I think it's a very nice image. I think it's an interesting space. One thing that I feel like this image as an image works nice. But if I find it lacking one how to put it, like the space it sits in, the geometrical shape of that, and this thing, it's very plain with all the gear and so on. You make the space look interesting, but I find the problem being that there's no real like hero shape within the room. Let me try to Google something and maybe we can I can find what I meant. Yeah, so this is not exactly what I wanted, but it's good enough. So by this, like the hero shape, what I'm talking about is that all the other shapes, it's like your room, um, and within this shape, you need something that dictates the like the character. Let's see what this looks like. Like this is an example of what doesn't work. Right, the props, rip, artist. The space itself is not very interesting to look at. There's no, I mean, the stairs maybe, but the props are placed in a way where it's just noisy, and they're trying to dictate the narrative of the room. Like you see, I mean, there is starting to be an interesting shape of stairs up and block down, and that could be a lot more stronger, and then that space would read a lot better. And that's why, for example, this space is an interesting one. You get repeating patterns, then you get the hero shape in the middle that dictates what's happening with supporting lines going up and so on and so on. And I feel like it's an easy fix that you could do in your concept by just thinking more in a spatial way how this room is designed, not only with the props and how they're placed, because that tells the story of them. I think the shape of the places and the things you've added are cool. Uh, I just think that, like, just honest, like you say, it's a box in a box kind of. And whenever you do spaces like this, that the initial playable space is just as important as the composition of the pieces. A good level designer has an understanding of that 3D space, that kind of architectural 3D space vision. You know, like, is it a vertical room? How is that vertical room designed so that when you move around in that space, you understand, get a cool impression. And the same is for your box. Like, if you would move around there, it would just be a rectangle, you know, with rectangular shaped things, kind of cutting the box into boxes. So it's important that you try to project yourself within that space and thinking, you know, how cool wouldn't it be if there was a stairs upstairs, or where would that upstairs be? Would the upstairs be over here, like with an overview of the room with a boardwalk that maybe that goes on top, so that when you're looking up that direction, there's multiple layers that can parallax when you're moving around in the 3D space. Or is it over here because it's a reactor room? There's actually structural downstairs, maybe with light coming up from underneath, and we can see down. Or, you know, it's important to try to break that box feeling, and it's very easy to fall into that trap. But overall, I think the prop designs are pretty cool. The layout of how you place them is pretty nice. It's just that flaw in spatial awareness of how you decided to have the room. It breaking the good hard work. Absolutely, just honest. It has to, because you move around in that space, and camera moves around in that space. It's even more important. The same with games. If you move around in a game, well-designed 3D space, you will instantly know your location and where you have to go purely by existing in that space. So when you're just in a box, you spin the camera and you don't know. So that would be the feedback for you, provoking perch. Okay, next one. Arms. Arms has been doing 3D. Interesting. Location. Okay. Main view. Additional shots. Isometric view. Kitchen, station room, bedroom. That's pretty cool. It's the same here, like I told Provoking Perch. The idea is great, but the spatial feeling there is, it's not presented in an ideal way. And I understand the challenge that you design something within the confinement of the space. And I don't think this you should have pushed. I think it would have been better to take this one and like the console one, and had them maybe as separate images, so that this would be an explanation picture of the. It's almost arbitrary. Like, we have the plan over here, but the way this is done, we don't understand the space correctly because the way we see it. These are a lot better explained. of the spatial aspect of it. Anyways, besides that, I think the palette is because of the barracks, they are multicolored. I would also try to unify it with not container materials, but something that helps push the additions together and separating them from the containers around. Like not trying to spread the palette out in between the rooms either, or maybe have more clearer separation between the rooms so that there's like a key color, but something that unifies it a lot more, because it's otherwise going to be so wide. The palette's going to be so wide and garish, which is a problem sometimes that you have arms of garish solutions. I would probably in the middle, the render, I would probably have expanded it out a little bit more. So that, because now it feels square, while we're losing some of that container feel, some of details or edge work or something that helps us sit in that space. It feels like we get it that it's containers because it's container walls, but containers are designed in a specific way so that we understand what they're made out of, So there's a little bit of a miscommunication there. Hey Tassos, how's it going, man? Welcome. Yeah, the one room model, yeah. It's cool. I like it. It's a great solution, like a compact hideout within containers. But I just wish that aspect was communicated in a stronger way, by subtle work that shows how they're putting them together. And the fact that the containers have different floors, I think even confuses it more. There would be maybe easier to have a one standard container look that's differently colored, but the floor is the same, and indicate that it's like used as a container floor, but maybe have a rim of additional floor to help unify the settings, so that the floor could be like that. It's an added addition to like the shittier industrial floor over here, and here maybe it's highly reflective, nice living area or reflections and so on. And then we see the surrounding things that are container. So just, it's a great base. You just need to push the idea further. I think it's a great spatial design that is within the container. It reads really well. It's just that communication of the final render is not fully realized. But still, it's cool stuff. Where are we with time? Alright, we got some more time. So this is one Amir Levy. The Hooded Duo hideout. Yeah, they're hiding in the forest. They're small trolls of sorts. Inside view. More or less air coming through. That's pretty cool. Oh, nice. Scale. I think this is pretty cool that they live inside that rock. Again, I think here, I think Amir Amir has a better like hero shape of the space, right? There's the off-center design. There's stairs up on the side. Even though I think though that aspect could be pushed a little bit more unique, um, but doesn't necessarily need to be in that to work. But the asymmetry of the space is great. I think I can imagine walking around in this space, but what Amir isn't doing as well is the prop aspect of it. I think the left side, the stairs there with the jars and chests, is really good. Then the cupboards and so on the upper floor and the bed, it's a little bit safe and unidentifying, if that makes sense. There's not a lot of character in them. It feels more like a technical drawing from IKEA of a bookshelf rather than this is the bookshelf with character for one of them or both of them. And by that, like I mean, you know, if we look at it and that they're living in a rock and in nature, you know, what possibly could be interesting to look at is maybe more crooked bookshelf or chest of drawers, um, and have a little bit more chaos involved there because it's already chaos in the rock, and there's a this risk you're running with these chests of drawers and bed and table and bookshelves over here. It's all very rigid, and when it becomes too rigid, you're removing the strength that you have in the spatial awareness, and you're solid, like you're making everything rigid just by organizing it too perfect, and there's no life within it to make the space feel like come alive and you want to be in there. Um, so that's a risk everyone is running when they're doing interior designs in perspective and so on, is that they try to be too controlling and too scared of making statements. 1 second. That sexy hair flip. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I don't think the shrunk aspect matters that much, but the rigidness of it is limiting the impact. Yeah, like I would imagine there's a little bit more wonkiness in the planks, a little bit of irregularities of how it's cut. You know, maybe there's a rug. Just a lot more variety in thickness, in angles would help really sell the space a lot more. But overall, I think the hero space aspect is really well executed, but the props are holding it back. Yeah, the stuff on the table is very organized and aligned as well, which is, you know, is something you clearly need to work on. Is prop placement. and like designing the space you have a grasp of really well. Probably because you made it in 3D and you've actually moved around in it already. Same as Alms, which he also did a great job. Um, but overall, pretty cool. Just work on that in like interior design. Um, let's see who else. I think maybe it's Gila. Oh, Super Groobly. Super Groobly. Okay, illustration. I had to look to see that there's a guy walking up. Uh, it's really good. Um, it's a nice idea and nice space, I think, overall. But the execution of the space is a bit flawed, and how we observe, like not observe, but how we are being presented of the 3D space. Um, so what I'm just gonna try to do is quickly um, make an example. So because you want to present the space of the stairs, right? There's a stairs down, and there's the guy sitting by the hideout, and we see the props there on the side, and then the crane holding the things, and that thing with barrels on top, and blah 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 blah. And then we could maybe have the guy in the skeleton in the foreground, guy walking up the stairs. Um, but what I'm doing now is more, I'm overlapping the space more. So not only do we get the sense of the location, but we're also creating a little bit more intimacy in terms of what we're being presented, and also when a chance when you're describing something, um, when you're describing something too much to the degree where it becomes an explanation rather than an expression of the location, is 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 that you're losing a lot of that viewer interaction and the viewer's understanding of the space. Button shortcuts. Shortcuts. So it's really important that try to balance the idea um, of how to put it in words, because you're illustrating, you've chosen to do an illustration, a painting, then it also requires you not to go too stiff and uh, too arranged. Like there's this running trend in it, in what a lot of people do as a mistake when they do environments, is that they're arranging everything and they're explaining everything too clearly, even when you're doing a design, a design of an interior. There is this kind of fluidity of space you need to have a grasp of, and be able to design something that reads really well at the same time as being designed. The aspects of the props, being well designed to fit the space, and the space is designed to fit the props. Like one thing that really works well is, or artist that does it really well, Cubicle Gamer, thank you, is like Uncharted. people. They use really good artists to help design a 3D space. I mean, now I'm just trying to quickly throw something together to make a point. Uh, but let's Google Uncharted 3. Let's see. Like this one, for example. Or these ones. A Tanzana. Where's that image? Here. Why are you making it everything so difficult? The sense of space and arrangement of shapes and how we read the depth and presentation of light and all these things, it becomes really important. And I can see that you tried, but it's really what you have to keep thinking about us as an observer of the space, what we're seeing and in what way. Much like Amir's issue with arranging it too much within a great space, you also have to think about presentation more because you're doing it as a view, as an illustration of the space. So we gotta have a lot more things in mind when we look at it. Let's see. 1 second. Station. Let's see. 1 second. 1 second. What game was it? This. So this is an image I made for Division, and they obviously manage the 3D space, the hero asset, which is the fountain or statue in the middle, and then some of the assets around, right? So that we get the space. They have already worked on the space. Then what I had to do is set light and mood, and design everything around it to enhance that basic shape, right? This, for example, was by another artist, but I helped art direct his efforts, and it is this the same idea that the structure it becomes the hero asset, and all these props around will help support the hero shape, the hero shape of the space. And then whatever you add to it, like the hanging man, the flag, the broken lamps on the side, and so on, it all contributes to how we read the space and how we kind of figuring out, right? And this is by another artist, Daniel. He worked there as well. And the shape of the room is like an L shape. So we had to make sure that L shape had the interesting spatial feeling, if you would walk around here, so that you interpret the space in a more hero type way, rather than the corridor itself is not fascinating. It's just an L-shaped corridor. But we added props and shapes and materials that helped the eye being guided through the space in a more interesting way. So that's the difference. In terms of presentation and the spatial awareness you perceive looking at the image. So my little sketch was just compacting the layers a little bit more so that we understand the depth a little bit better, and we're getting it presented stronger, rather than everything in this one is perfectly towards the camera at the same distance to everything, and then we don't care so much about what's being there because everything is at the mid ground, and there's no depth, there's no punch, there's no impact, you know. But it's good effort, super groovy. I'm running out of time. This is Gila. I think it's really cool. I think it's a little bit hard to understand what's happening, but it looks like a castle with a, is it water inside? But I don't know. But it looks very interesting, fascinating painting. Uh, I would like to know more about that space. This is by someone new, which is Pavel Kamieniecki. Oh, I think there's some anatomical issues that kind of ruins the impact. But overall, I think the space is nice, and you are running a little bit of the same issues like Super Groovy did, where everything is in the middle ground and explained. Try to think of it like a movie. Where would they place the characters in a shot so it doesn't look stale and boring? You know, what dynamics? How close are they cropping? How far away are they looking? You know, if it's going to be a presentation of the interior, you have to also think about the placement of the characters within that interior, because now you're also choosing to do an illustration of the space rather than a design of the space. So you need to check certain other boxes, like I said, like Super Groovy had to do, in comparison to One Amir, which is was a different nut to crack. Uh, Yeah, exactly. If you go away from isometric design, you're not designing the space anymore. You're designing the impact of the space, your emotion more. Like this one is doesn't care so much about the space as in the feeling of the location, right? Let's say Amir did a lot more design in the actual space. Even if he painted it as an illustration, the point is not how it feels to be in that space. It's how is that space designed. So when you're choosing not to, and you have to still design the interior, you have to be more impact and mood. Here's Tomkus, and I like the idea of the outhouse and how they get into it. It's very nice. Again, this is like the box within the box feel. Even though it is a bunker, you could play around a lot more with fun shapes. Um, like the German bunkers, even though they were, you know, like compact and very strong, there was still a certain spatial feeling to them, uh, and certain angles of walls, etc., and proportions of the of things and ups and downs and angles like this and things that made there's a reason why they look the way they look, you know, so that they can take punishment from the top and still survive. Arcs, you know, help shift the impact to sides. Uh, there's a lot of ways to make a bunker feel less of a box. You know, subtle things like this. But obviously, we're seeing yours from the top. But you could easily do that to one side wall. One of the walls could be angled, or have a chamfer to it, or having something in like this, just some more layers to it to make it a lot more engaging. Oh, thank you, hydration, but oh, sorry. Here's Gila's. She worked more on it. Yeah, it makes more sense now. We can see it. It's very nice. I like the spatial aspect of really really high pillars. I think that looks cool and it's very reflective and it still looks like water. I would just love a little bit more definition so we can fully understand it. But it looks cool. It looks like they have like taken care of the temple or a palace, but here it looks like it's underwater. Like there's maybe a mine there, or it, the mixture is intriguing of beautiful palace with a water element to it. I think that has a really nice like juxtaposition to itself. Um, but yeah, overall, you guys did a really good job. Really interesting results. And you few brave souls who did interior design, I applaud you. Good job. So later on today, I will be posting the next 2 week challenge. So keep an eye out on Discord. Congratulations to everyone who contributed. Uh, awesome to see all the designs and interpretation of the topic. Really cool. Fantastic. Let's I think my phone said Kuru is going live, so let's raid him. Oh, my pleasure. Thanks everyone for contributing to the 2 week challenge. It was awesome seeing everyone's work, and I'll upload this to YouTube and all that afterwards when I have time today. Looking forward to the next 2 week challenge. Bye bye, everyone.